me. So anyway, that was my little bruja breakup love poem, whatever that was.
Oh, yeah. I like that. Like, you no longer curse me and no longer curse you. So let's just go our separate way. I apologize. I forgot to hit the record button again until just that moment. I'm so sorry if I cut you off at the very end, Priscilla. I forget
Oh,
about
no,
that lady's
you
voice.
didn't.
I forget that she talks so loudly.
No worries. I do that all the time to people, and it didn't throw me off at all. So
Okay. Where did you go? Now you look like a
I know
fantasma. ¿Qué pasó? Oh, don't
the
scare me.
light went up, the light timed out.
Oh, spooky.
Bien spooky.
Spooky. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I did find a link for it's kind of a weird site. Yeah, Tales of Texas Haunted Lake Espantosa.
Hmm.
So I guess if folks want to read up more on this. I'd never heard of that lake before, so it's somebody's blog, and I do not authorize it or whatever. What do you call it? Endorse it. Like, I haven't even read it, so I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
It's okay.
No, it's okay. I'm sure there's a lot of, I'm sure it probably has a lot of the stuff that, that we've heard already. So
Mhm. You know, my both of my parents grew up in rural places. My father especially, like, a wood frame house with 10 kids in it, and the dad rarely home and the mom ran away, and then the car drives up on the dirt road. You see the headlights from, half a mile away, and they're approaching, and then you recognize the sound of the car, the rock and roll coming out through the open windows, and it's just your brother. He just had a late shift at work. Well, there's a story that my dad told us about one of his many brothers who was at home, standing at the front screen door at night, and he watched as headlights were approaching of a car that was coming back home, and eventually he recognized it was one of his siblings arriving at night. And no street lights and no pavement there, just all dirt road. And so when the brother got out of the car and came into the house, the one who had been standing at the door said, "Hey, ¿cómo estás? Welcome. There's leftovers." But then he also asked, "Hey, who was it that you gave a ride to?" And the other brother's like, "Oh, what?" And the one at the door who'd been at the door said, "Well, right when you opened the door, I saw somebody climb out from the back seat and run into the fields." So I mean, that was so haunting, knowing that for the entire ride, one of my uncles as a young man had somebody in the back seat and didn't even know it. Unless it was a ghost, I don't know.
That's creepy.
Creepy. Yes, yes. Yeah. So who's next? Did you say you had something else, Richard?
I do, but if there's people who haven't spoken yet, this is
Well,
shorter than the last thing, though.
so let's see, Lorraine or Alice, McKay, have you decided if you want to share something with us tonight? And you can respond in the chat if you like, if you don't want to.
I think she's just listening tonight.
How about you, Alice?
Well, this doesn't take long. I could do it.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Even though the introduction to it is that this is about page 84 of a 400-page novel. But it doesn't need any introduction at all. It's an aside, and you'll understand what I mean immediately. And it's just for tonight. This is not a story about ghosts, though I suppose it might be, depending on your definition of the term. Most commonly, I believe folks understand the word to refer to the spirits of departed people who can somehow still influence our living plane. Some who have lost beloved pets find it easy, even necessary, to confer that honor to those they miss so well, having anthropomorphized them already in regard to so much else. Said people, though, often have a harder time extending that belief to animals in general, though others firmly hold that all vertebrates must certainly have ghosts or can achieve ghosthood. Still others might go so far as to include the entire animal kingdom, while others can't imagine any life without spirit, leaving room for ghosts of plants, fungi, bacteria, and protists. Then we have the animists who ascribe spiritual essence to objects and places as well, both concrete and abstract, for whom the universe could possibly become an all-encompassing ghost and might be already. Setting all this heady speculation aside and returning to our starting point, the notion of ghosts as human spirits, note that there is one other group who consider ghosts to be not limited solely to our dear departed, believing that living people have ghosts as well, that we all have ghosts that haunt the places where we've dwelt or lingered or traveled or had strong emotion, that your ghost and mine could bump into each other in a restaurant or have a discussion or find themselves dancing on a street corner where we've never in life stood at the same time, even in fact if we have never met, that the ghosts of the living are far more prevalent and influential than ghosts of the dead, and do what they need to do just as we do, and sometimes wander off when we're not looking. As I've mentioned, I have no interest in telling you what or what not to believe, and welcome whatever you do believe or bring to the conversation without any intent to change that. Your beliefs are your business and your task to mold, nurture, free, or tackle however you seem fit. So, you might subscribe to any of the notions I've set forth on this current topic, or several, all, or none of them, and I recognize that you will view the story in whatever way you damn well please. But if I were to consider this to be a story about ghosts, rather than just a story about using ghosts as branding, and despite the fact that I've come close to claiming that it is not, I believe I'd have to go with that latter notion that I posited, the last in the compendium, assuming that I'd have to choose just one, that if this were to be a ghost story, it would have to be about the ghosts of the dead and the living, but mostly of the living. That's all. I just thought I would share that. I always thought that was an interesting sort of thing about ghosts that I've always believed, actually.
And that made me think about how I might try to contact y'all after I'm gone, and how it might be as challenging to reach through that membrane, to reach the place of the living, as much it might as may continue to exist on the planet once I'm gone. Um, that it might be like when you're asleep and you're trying to wake up out of a bad dream, and that's kind of pretty hard sometimes. You're like,
Mhm.
and you're still asleep. Yeah, so I don't know, I might work on that as a project, like trying to figure out some specific hints that I'll drop from the other side.
Hmm.
You know, like I will drop green silk cloth scarves on the street, and that would be my sign. I don't know.
I'll drop wax lips.
Wax lip. I'll leave a bunch of cigarette butts all over, and you'll know that I have been there.
For me, it'll just be the smell of chicharrones. Oh,
Mm.
wait, that's too common. It'd be like, Danny's everywhere. What the hell's going on? Okay, I gotta think of something else. I'm sorry.
I've got a bag of chicharrones in the back room, so you've just tempted me to go tear it open later. Thank you very
Should
much.
late night snacking.
Snack. I do it. I can't help it. There's no one here to stop me. The cats are on my
Late-
side.
Late night snack republic.
Boy. There you go, Richard. I have something to share that's more like eerie spooky than like outright like ghastly spooky. And it's there's a piece I wrote in January during a workshop that I attended virtually. And then months later, like last month, a friend in San Francisco started showing me images of paintings he'd done. And I saw one of the paintings and I said, that's my poem. You've just depicted my poem. And lo and behold, he put together I can't believe I said lo and behold. He put together an art show with a collective I'm apparently a part of in San Francisco at a small gallery. And he was going to place my poem alongside his painting. So first I'm going to share the image of the painting. So you'll see that. So I saw this for the first time just a few weeks ago. And he's very his work is taking in a lot of thought about and processing thought about capitalism, post-capitalism, climate crisis, climate change, rising tides and sea levels and stuff like that. So there's this image, okay? And now I'm going to read my poem, which, where is it? Ways to drown elegantly. Live stream upstream in a cream floor-length gown with a dream date, waving a red scarf over your softly waving fingers as you undulate with the waves and quietly get taken away with the merciful minnows. Ways to drown elegantly. A huge Mayan pyramid floats on the ocean water, and you appear in a period costume of ancient goddesses and gracefully walk down the decades of stairs to the last step before water. You set your ample veil aflame as you fling it off and away from your body. So
Yay.
it's kind of eerie.
It is. It's a very strange coincidence. It's nice.
I'm happy that I know him, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have gotten to see that work. And I wonder how many of us are doing that kind of what would you call it? Like we're collaborating without even knowing who our collaborators are. We're channeling a lot of the same types of information, processing realities and thoughts and imaginings, and working in different art forms. Anyway, Josh Katina lives in San Francisco, and pretty cool young man.
Probably more than we know. Right?
It would have to be, and I think that does happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me share that.
Mm-hmm.
Ken
So
Steven,
is that up now? Is that an exhibit that's up?
it was one night only.
Oh, okay. Like a
And
pop-up exhibit.
so much was happening at the time, Richard, I didn't even get a moment to like plug it to you or any
That's okay.
things there. Yeah, it was very, very like up one day and then gone the next.
Yeah, just curious. Yeah.
Richard, you gave me an idea when you talked about your novel. I was like, well, what if I read a piece of my very messy and not finished novel that I'm actually working on and trying to finish? And it is a vampire Western novel. So, for Los Spookies, maybe it's just the thing to read a little piece of that, not the whole novel.
We have about 10 minutes, so yeah.
I thought you were going to be like, oh, we're breaking up, Danny. I
No.
have to get you off this call.
We're here. We're just gonna turn our cameras off, but we're here.
Yeah.
We're here.
Exactly.
We're here.
I usually introduce that by saying, I'm about to say the scariest thing that the last thing anyone ever wants to hear at a poetry reading. I'm going to read an excerpt from my novel.
Ooh, it's scary, kids.
As long as it's good, please.
Anybody remember Count Floyd? Count Floyd from Second City Television? Anybody know? I'm the only like super old one on the call. Okay.
No, it sounds familiar.
Okay, so I'll just read this thing, and I'm not going to read too much. If that's okay, Tammy, you're the boss.
Well, what was that illusion? I didn't know how to answer it because I didn't understand
Oh,
something.
have you ever? Okay, have you ever heard the show Second City Television?
Oh yeah.
Well, there was a bit at the Count Floyd, the monster chiller horror theater, and Count Floyd would come out dressed as like a vampire. I forget that
I missed
actor's
it.
name,
Sorry,
the
missed that
comedian's
one.
name, but he
Yeah.
would be like, "Oh, it's so scary, kids! This week we're going to have Dr. Tongue," and this crazy shit, you know. So, anyway, I'm using up all my time doing this, but
And now Danny Solis, who's our featured poet, writer, novelist for the day and night and the year and the century, is going to read an excerpt, ever so brief. Yeah, you have like 9 minutes and take as little or as much of that as you need.
I am not going to read for 9 minutes, but I will.
Thank you. I kind of didn't want that either, but
Sure,
just being
well,
sweet.
you and me both. So let me just read this little piece, and again, you know, I'm gonna forego an intro. I hate hillbilly vampires, Paloma muttered to no one in particular. The sun was setting. Paloma listened to the wind and night birds warming up for their nocturnal opera. There was the strong smell of sage and wild rosemary. Yes, and they hate you, Dinesh responded, from a few feet away, invisible in the underbrush. It startled Paloma, but she didn't show it. She found it irritating that Dinesh could still sneak up on her. She plucked a rosemary stem and twirled it idly between her thumb and forefinger, gently crushing the leaves. She held the stem to her nose, inhaling deeply. As she scanned the small valley that sloped down to a mine, the entrance gaped like a dark maw and emanated the smell of deep, wet earth. It was framed by heavy but rotting wood beams. You have killed so many of them, they have a right to hate you. You would kill all of them if you could, Dinesh said. Paloma threw down the stem in irritation. They're monsters. They have no rights. Dog looked up at her and wiggled his haunches. She had trained him to respond to hand signals and movements of her head. He had been lying in the same place for a good while, awaiting some signal from her to do something different. He watched her alertly. Dog was a huge beast, well over 100 pounds of muscle and bone. His wiry fur was a tan to gray grizzle. He wore a collar of thick leather covered in steel spikes, coated in silver. Dinesh emerged from the cover of sage and scrub mesquite. Monsters. To them, you are the monster. To them and the rabbits you love to eat. I know, Dinesh, I am the monster, Paloma interrupted. You've told me enough times. Dog growled very softly. Paloma and Dinesh paused and listened, looking toward the mine entrance. Nothing but the breeze as it ruffled the cottonwoods and chamisa. Dog sat motionless, staring at the mine entrance. Paloma adjusted her grip on her rifle and turned to say something to Dinesh, but he was gone, disappeared silently into the gloaming. She could never get used to the way he could vanish and reappear so silently. She wondered if Soledad and her other various companions scattered across the valley were alert and ready. From her vantage point, Soledad wondered the same thing about the others. She picked up her double-barrel 10-gauge shotgun and pointed it casually towards the mine entrance. The massive shotgun was loaded with a mixture of lead, shot, silver dimes, and wild garlic cloves. She was much closer to the mine entrance than Paloma. Her job this evening was to kill the last vampire as it emerged, and then use her dynamite to start an avalanche and seal the entrance. The problem was that she didn't know exactly how many vampires were in the mine. Her and her companions knew for sure. I'm sorry, wait a second. Something's going on. Her and her companions knew for sure there were 10 at least, but Dinesh liked to remind them that when it came to vampires, nothing was certain. Are you ready? Dinesh whispered beside her. She didn't flinch or look at him. About as ready as I'm gonna get, I expect. You? I am always ready to die, my friend, he said as he uncoiled a braided horsehide rope from around his torso. He had won the rope from an old cibolero in a game of riddles. He thought of the old man fondly and wondered what had become of him. On one end of Dinesh's rope, there was a variation on a cleaver blade, long, rectangular, and heavy, with a hole on one end where the rope went through. On the other end was a thick, double-pointed crepe myrtle stake with a riveted metal band in the middle. Soledad had seen him spin it faster than her eyes could follow in intricate patterns that ended in the dismemberment and final death of any number of vampires. She preferred her guns and occasionally a crossbow. She had tried a longbow and various hand-to-hand weapons, but had found that she had little talent or affinity for such things. Something stirred in the mouth of the mine. A shape emerged slowly from the black rectangle of the entrance. Just a face, pale as a cloud, but with a greenish glow. Stopping right there. Thank you.
Oh, you just got your hooks in me, and then that's it.
That was terrific.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I put a link to the Wikipedia article on Count Floyd.
Oh, cool. So everybody can enjoy.
He was played by Joe Flaherty. I'm not sure how to say his last name, but I do remember SCTV because I'm an old fucker also.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. It's good. I like that people get old. I want to get old because what's the alternative, right?
Yeah. On people's birthdays, I still, even though they freak some people out, I always say, "You're still alive." Because that's the celebration. It's supposedly.
When I was about 15 years old, and my parents would go to the Saturday night Tejano dances, and so I was left in charge of my younger siblings, and so then I was in charge of the TV set in terms of what we would watch. And lo and behold, they started showing. Oh man, lo and behold, damn it, get that out of my mouth. Whoa. um, we discovered this Monty Python's Flying Circus aired on Saturday nights around 10:30 or maybe a little bit earlier. And then just a few years ago, I found out that the Dallas public television market was the very first public television market to run Monty Python's Flying Circus in the country. And so that means I was one of the first brown teenage females to find that show even interesting. And of course we found it interesting because it was rebellious and because it was so at odds with the rest of reality that we had to navigate in the freaking 70s and 80s. And I was down for that, please give me more. And then within a year, Saturday Night Live manifested on NBC, and I'm like, oh my god, there's more of us. We're taking over like zombies and vampires, and we come out at night and we're turning things upside down and creating a new kind of a hyper reality in the US. I loved it. I'm here for that. So SCTV was part of that too for me. The Lodge, yes. For Halloween one year I was was it the I don't know what it was called, but the lumberjack character.
Yeah,
I'm a
don't think he
lumberjack
had a
and I'm
name.
okay. I didn't yeah. And I didn't care that I was
All day.
goofy.
I put on women's clothing and hang around in bars.
That was yeah.
Tammy, we were probably watching that at the same time because
Getting our minds blown same time. But yeah, you were just up the road and I didn't know my Danny.
yeah. So I just wanted to say something after the novel that the reason I started writing it, right, and the reason I got the idea is because people always tell you, if you don't see what you want out there, right, in terms of books or movies or whatever, then you've got to create it, right? And being a big fan of westerns and Lonesome Dove and Buffy and all that stuff, and I was like, we are not represented. There are no Chicanos or Chicanas unless we're like gangbangers or maids. We get to be bandidos, but we get shot immediately, So what would it look like, if there was some strong characters, that were not white and male, or white and blonde and female? What would that look like? And so that's why I started writing that. Yeah, Paloma Flores is the character who you were introduced to right away. And she's like, she's young, right? She's like not as young as Buffy, but she's young. She's like 20, early 20s around there. And is a vampire killer, takes it very seriously. That's her job. She's got her Scooby gang out in the desert. They're hunting down the monsters out there. So anyway, that's what's up with that.
Get it done and get it out there.
I'm almost done. I'm at about 115,000 words right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then the editing process, which I like doing that, right? I love composing, but I'm not averse to editing. So,
I'm sure you know this, and I've read it, but because I did a lot of research, because the novel I wrote was the first one, and it turned out very large. But it's like once you get it edited in the place you want it, then you put it in a box and then put that in the drawer, and you don't look at it for 2 months minimum, and then you read it again, and with the idea that you're going to edit it once more at least.
Sure.
And it's kind of like a miracle. It's so interesting because that's how you'll see the little things that should be there and the little things that shouldn't, that you couldn't see because you were still sleeping with it, before you put it in the drawer. Yeah, it's a really good. There's a whole lot on it, but things to read about how to do that. But
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, your work would be, it would qualify as Latinx speculative fiction. And man, that's like, hold on your hat and hold on to your horse, because Latinx speculative fiction is really taking off, man, with sci-fi, horror, fantasy, gothic fiction writing, and
Yeah.
so this subgenre you're thinking about or that you're writing about, Western vampire, it's it's totally in that realm. And I know people who are putting that stuff out, and scholars who are writing about it, promoting it. So I definitely would be happy to help you make connections when you're looking for publishers and stuff like that, Danny.
Thank you so much. I got a friend in Austin who has got a couple of books out, and his agent said she would look at it, but
that's sweet.
Only if I put it in chapters. And I told him, how does she know that it's not in chapters? And he was like, well, she's been emailed more than one just like long paragraph in a Google Doc. And I was like, oh right, I need to work. I got work to do. So not averse.
I'm having trouble finding anyone to look at mine because it has popular song lyrics.
Oh.
And that's and I don't want to take them out, but that's something that's good to know. Like, publishers won't pick something up if it's got, because it's really expensive
copyright
to get the rights. Yeah.
What about ASCAP? Is that just for performing? It probably is, huh? It's like
no, I think it is ASCAP they have to pay. And it depends on the artist.
What about sampling, man? Come on.
I know. I mean, I put Cyndi Lauper lyrics in my novel, and everybody who's I mentioned it to is like, sorry, but but I'm sending it out still to agents and stuff.
Is that your novel, Richard, that you're referring to?
There's like a little like goblin or something with you. I don't know what that is.
What are you looking at? Is this in your house?
No, it's in Priscilla's house.
Oh,
she has like a little spirit.
You scared me.
A little spookista. I don't know. I made that up.
It's baby Christian.
Yeah.
But he's so vague and blurred. He needs to come forward. He has beautiful
But yeah, he's
features.
in the background. He's like underwater back there. What's up, kid? Come on now.
Oh,
There he is.
yes.
Put your beautiful
Hi.
face in the camera.
Turn on that
There you
mic,
go.
Priscilla.
Okay, Cristiano, say something. Say hello now. He was talking to you all. Say hi.
Hi, buddy.
Hey,
Hey, what's your Halloween costume gonna be? Do you know
I
yet?
want to know that too.
What are you gonna be for Halloween, Chris?
You see, I farted.
All right.
Oh, nice.
See, that's the advantage of a Zoom call. I'm over here,
Bravo.
not in the fart zone. I'm outside of the fart zone.
What are you gonna be for Halloween, Cristiano? Don't be silly. What are you gonna be, baby? Power Ranger. Okay.
Oh,
Yes.
He is a little goblin, you're right.
Goblin.
oh, it's so great to see a little shorty in the room.
Yeah, I love kids at readings, poetry readings. I remember when I first started out and like I don't know, wherever I was, and some poets would get so like fucking huffy about kids being at the reading. And I'm like, you must have never been to a Mexican movie theater, because if you can't do your stuff while the kid's running around, either, I don't know, you need to like focus more, practice, go rehearse, get out of here. Of course, that didn't go over too well either, but
Yeah.
But that's the only time I haven't gone over well with huffy poets. That one and only time.
suppose if the kids aren't biting me while I'm trying to read, that's probably, so okay. I had a reading last fall. It was in a park, like before we were really going indoors as much, and it was super nice, and like a little urban amphitheater, and these two women were there who I didn't know, and they had a dog, and whatever, was in a park. But here's the thing, and I don't know how they did this or exactly what. Maybe the dog went to readings all the time, but when people would applaud, the dog would howl until people stopped applauding. So it was awesome because the dog was like applauding with everybody. And yeah, I loved that dog.
He's the poetry dog. And they brought that dog for free. They didn't like send you an invoice for bringing the poetry dog.
I know. It was so awesome.
That is incredible. That's incredible, man. I take it as a compliment if little kids run up and attack me while I'm reading.
Yeah.
It was one time I was doing a poem, and actually it was my godson, but he came running up on stage and I just picked him up. He was like 3, I just picked him up and held him while I did the rest of the poem. I'm like, what? This is a kid. He needs attention.
Mm-hmm.
Here I'm multitasking.
Well, if somebody needs to do an appendectomy on the stage, I say, yeah, go for it. Just pull out the scalpel. Go. I mean, like life.
Sure.
I don't think poetry should be so like synthetic and
So precious.
Yeah, like only that can happen in the moment. I mean, like why can't you be on the street?
No.
How that with the dogs? But we are like those of us in this room have been in those places where all the species and all the genders are cohabiting at the same in the moment. I love it.
One time, Bob Holman. Do you guys know Bob Holman? I don't know. Maybe some of you do.
I know Holman.
Yeah. So I lived in Boulder at the time, and he was doing a big reading at Naropa with a bunch of other people. And, I didn't go there, but I was familiar, and he knew that I had done this before. So he talked to me and this woman I knew to wrap ourselves in duct tape. Like we didn't have any clothes on except for duct tape. And at a certain point in his reading, we came running in screaming through the audience and went up on stage and tackled him and dragged him off screaming. That was all. But, I was like, that's when I really started to like him. I didn't know him that well at that point.
I've had the urge to do that with Bob many times.
Yeah, well, that's another thing I learned later on. But,
yeah, but
I had the urge to throw tomato soup at a Van Gogh painting, but somebody beat me to it the other day.
Oh man. You know
At
what
the
I've been
Tate.
thinking
I
about?
think it was at the Tate Museum. It was in London. Anyway.
Mhm.
You know what I've been thinking about lately though? Is like unactivated space within your city. Like
Mhm.
there's a corner of the little fairgrounds here in Rochester, Minnesota, that's probably it's like a triangle, and there's like a line of trees like 20 yards behind the corner of this fenced in area. And then beyond that is just a little more green space and then a parking lot. But in this triangle, right, there's probably room for like an audience of 30 people and then like a performance space too. And it's fenced in, so you're not like vulnerable to traffic. But I'm thinking this would be a great place to do a performance. Or like I'm walking down the street and I see like a grown over, empty lot or and I know I'm not the only one thinking this shit, but lately they've really begun to jump out at me and be like, this could be a, non-traditional performance space.
Mhm.
Look here.
Yeah, I mean, I bike everywhere, so that I see those spaces all the time, these little hidden pockets. And even before the pandemic, I was spotting places where if I was unhomed, I think I would be comfortable sleeping. I think it's good to know where those spaces are in your home city in case you lose your key and you can't get into your house. Where are you going to sleep that night? If you already have that spot picked out for yourself, then it's just one extra way to be prepared.
I love your sense of adventure, Tammy. I love
I have a question for
sheer survivalist mentality, because yeah, things have happened to me, so I know now to not be caught off guard.
when I was living in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the Harvard Square area. I mean, you'd walk around and there'd be storyteller over there, a mime over there, somebody reading poetry over here, a musician. I mean, everywhere. And I'm just wondering, does that exist anymore? Does it exist where you people are? I mean,
there are people that busk around the city sometimes, but they're very rare, and mostly they do it in sort of in the framework of a larger event. Like there's a thing called Thursdays on First that happens during the warm months, like the summer months here. And so there are a ton of street vendors. And so there's a place in the Thursdays on First framework where a bunch of buskers line up next to each other. I lived in Cambridge too, by the way, actually Somerville and first Cambridge, then Somerville, for
Same
like
here.
4 years. So I was like totally, I mean, I knew Harvard Square and yeah, I mean, it was an amazing place for watching people busk. There could be like an Andean, like authentic, right? Like guys from South America playing pan pipes and rattles and singing and stuff. And then 10 feet away, there's like a Afro-Cuban percussion group. And then, go 30 feet more and there's folk singers. And there was it was actually a family that played, like I think there were three of them. And it was like a singer and a guitar player and a keyboard player. And the mom played keyboards and the daughter sang and the son played guitar. They were good, man. If I had money, I would always give them money. But yeah, that kind of foment was really special.
Yeah, I took a storytelling workshop with Brother Blue.
Brother Blue.
Yeah, and he actually told a story. He came to my wedding, told a story for my wedding because my wife and I both were in his workshop.
That's a real blessing.
And in the storytelling workshop, you tell a story, and to critique somebody's story, you had to tell a story that critiqued the story. It had to be in the form of a story.
That sounds like Brother Blue. If I may, I don't want to interrupt you, but I got all excited when you said Brother Blue. because I was there in the Boston area from 90 to 94. And he was one of the first, he was probably the first person that made me feel comfortable, that came up and greeted me and told me he liked my work and was just so effusive and genuine and wonderful and beautiful. And him and Sister Ruth both, her name is
Right.
Ruth, but because Brother Blue, I would call her Sister Ruth, and she would always laugh, you know. But
I
for those
interviewed
people-
Ruth.
yeah,
I was doing work on faith development, and I did an interview of her about her faith journey. This- I need to do something with it. I came upon it in my file cabinet the other day. Yeah, I worked with Brother Blue for 3 years. My best friend was a drummer who used to drum for him all the time. He'd perform at different churches, and we'd go to storytelling workshops at these churches and perform with him and do stuff.
Could you give us a general, like, 1 or 2 sentence bio of this person, Brother Blue? I guess they're male. Are they still
Right.
alive?
Well, no, he died. He died recently. He Dr. Hugh Morgan Hill was his full name. He was black, dressed all in blue with ribbons and blue.
He has a Wikipedia page.
Right, and I mean he's pretty well known.
Oh, thank you, Richard. I didn't see
Yeah.
that.
There's
Yeah,
a
I just put it
couple.
up.
There's a couple of books. I have a couple of books of his that have been not of his, but that people wrote about him. And but he was an institution for sure, and in Cambridge.
and he would show up and he would improvise most of the time.
Yeah.
He would pick a theme, like he may pick, one of the first times I ever saw him, he started doing Romeo and Juliet, like telling a story, right? And he's scatting and doing this, like, jazz scat and this hipster language, but like real hipster, not like people drinking craft brew and eating, basil pizza, but like from hipster from back in the day, like roots, deep roots.
Mhm.
And then he could stop and actually quote the actual Shakespeare in the middle of his scatting and bebopping. He was a Shakespearean scholar to that level, right? So it just depended on what he wanted to do on any given evening. And one night, and I'm getting a chill thinking about it, at the Cantab in Cambridge, he got up and he was in a little bit more serious mood, and he did an improvisation about Miles Davis. And it was incredible. It's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, and it was, he would take you with him. If you paid attention, you would be rewarded, because he was incredible. And I'm so glad that you brought him up, because now this time of the year, right, it is a good thing to think of, and such a wonderful and such a brave soul,
Mhm.
because he was old when he died. Was he in his 90s? I think, or
Well,
late
he
80s?
was.
88 is what the Wikipedia says.
Late
Yeah.
80s.
He had an official website, but it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Well,
It's too bad.
he was like the tip of the spear when it came to a lot of instances of integration,
Mhm.
and resistance to that, when he was a young man. So I mean,
And he was a soldier in World War II.
he
And,
was, yeah.
I mean, and his wife Ruth worked in the Harvard Museum bookstore, and she was a wonderful person who fully supported him in everything that he did. And he had a Master of Arts in Drama from Yale, and PhD from Harvard. And like I said, he was a classical scholar. I mean, he and wove everything together in his stories.
So y'all are saying that he was accessible to you because he was on the streets. So he was highly visible on the square pretty
Yeah.
regularly, like the buskers in New Orleans type thing. So
Yeah, I
he
mean,
Well,
he wasn't busking. I mean, I don't think he put a thing out to get money from his storytelling.
No, he was accessible to me because he would get up and read at like all the open mics that I would
okay,
go to in
okay,
like 1990.
okay.
That's when I met him in 1990, and like he didn't care if it was a slam or what. If they would give him 3 minutes on the mic, he would get up and he would fucking rattle the place. You know, he would shake everything up. He would rearrange your DNA. You know, your spiritual,
Oh,
artistic
that feels
DNA.
good when somebody
And
can.
he-
I saw the David Bowie documentary film last Sunday, and that rearranged my DNA.
Oh, I didn't manage to see it.
Oh
Oh,
my
damn it.
gosh. Oh my gosh. See it,
Yeah.
find it. It'll come.
Well, I was gonna go.
It's the first David Bowie film or doc that's been approved by the estate. Like they say this is legit. So it's the first one.
Mhm.
So go see it. It's amazing. When
Yeah.
it'll come back. It'll circulate.
So I Googled Brother Blue also. There's a bunch of YouTubes of him, and I just posted a couple of them.
So if
Um,
we hadn't come into this space, the number of us that have been here, and it's very fruitful to me, I say this over and over again, if there are fewer than 10 or fewer than 20 people, it's very fruitful because it allows us space and time to just happen to make a comment or a slight observation, and it leads somebody on one side of this country to say, I knew that person too. And then before we know it, we're all learning. And so thank you, Jeffrey and Danny, for talking about your Dr. Blue friend, your brother Blue.
Brother, he actually came. I mean, I knew him when I was at Harvard from 75, 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, in that range. And he, after I came here, we hosted him. He came, spoke at one of the historically black colleges over in Dallas area. Well, can't remember where he was that he was speaking, but that was the last time that I saw him. Though it was sometime in the 90s.
Wow, this is exciting. I love doing research. Thank you for the links, Richard. I want to watch some video.
yeah,
out
I didn't
there.
watch any yet. I just chose a couple and put links up. But you know, once you get on YouTube with something, you'll get a lot more. Looks like there's
Right.
a bunch. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sort of
Yeah.
fading a little bit because I had a crazy day, but
Thank you all. Yeah, we're at 10:23, so I think we'll call it a night. I'm gonna hit the stop record button right this second, and